Hi there, it's Memory from Friends Abroad Relationship School, and today we have another interesting episode, 35 of Trauma on the Screen. And the film today that we are showing is Osage County. An interesting film again, portraying childhood trauma. And I am going to be joined by Judita, who's going to come and help me to review this film. A very interesting film, really, indeed. So I'm going to dive into this film. And what I've done is, apart from the themes that I've put on there, which I can't see from where I am going to dive into childhood trauma foremost. There we go. There's my friend. Can you share to Friends Abroad, Judita, before you join? And I will add you to join me. Adding Judita. This is a actually in terms of its portrayal of childhood trauma and many other themes in a codependent or toxic relationship. Hello there. My Manu.
Yeah, that's a very nice title. What an honor.
How are you doing? And Manu, how is he?
Yeah, we're both very good. He's doing his screen time in the kitchen. Yeah, we had a fun day, played around a lot. Yeah.
Oh, that's lovely. So very, very good film. Thank you for joining me for portrayal of childhood trauma, and very, very powerful to show family dynamics and all the various effects of trauma, isn't it? So apart from the themes that I've shared on there, what I was thinking is that we could go through these people one at a time and look into the various aspects of trauma that they portrayed in this film, isn't it?
I think that would be a good approach because you need almost like a diagram, who's who and what happened with everyone. So I did that in my notes.
Yeah.
Because I watched this movie some time ago, actually, and it was one of the first ones that I think both me and Anna suggested when you had this idea to start. And I think we lost it in the middle of everything. But here we are, so we're doing it.
Yeah.
And it's a great one as well, one of the great ones.
That's true.
Of the many.
So I have started with Violet. Violet is the mother, isn't she? Which is a role played by Meryl Streep. Really awesome acting in there. So we start with Violet, or we could start with Bev, the husband. Maybe let's go to Bev. Bev is a poet, and an award-winning poet, and he has been for 50 years a functional alcoholic. And he also has stayed in a relationship that is not healthy for that long. I mean, they've been married for ages because they have known each other for over 50 years, as far as she says, when they got married, and when she was talking about his alcoholism. And then they brought up a family together, and they lived, when in his narration, they were living together apart, really. They each have separate lives, and they had a silent or tacit agreement about the fact that he was an alcoholic and she was a drug addict, medication addict. Yeah. And also, we are wondering how this came about. And there's another bit to it, that he actually slept with his wife's sister and had a son with her. The son whose father, or supposedly father, doesn't know that he's not his son. And on top of that, he also ends up committing suicide.
Yeah.
And this is powerful, because we are wondering where that came from, and luckily we've got the answers in there about this man's upbringing, where he lived in a car, in a sedan, from the age of 4 to the age of 10. How traumatic that can be for a child, quite deprived, isn't it?
Yeah,
Yeah.
completely. Yeah.
What do you
You're talking about Bev, right?
Bev,
Beverly.
the husband, yes.
Yeah. I mean, look, I thought, I mean, we're talking about him, but I'm thinking both him and her, like Violet and Beverly together, it's a classic codependency kind of relationship that actually has the actual alcoholism and addiction,
Yes.
the drug. I mean, she was addicted to pills and he was addicted to alcohol, and she's a very dysfunctional person, and he cannot stand up to her.
No.
He cannot assert himself to her, and so I think it's his way of coping, you know, where he had this hidden relationship with her, or you know, child with her sister, and it's very yeah, very damaging, actually, all of this, also to others. And it seems like almost everyone, well, some people actually know. So it's almost like an implicit, it's an implicit silence, you know, that taboo that they don't speak about. But actually Violet knew all along. And
Yeah.
and so, I mean, Ivy didn't know, one of the daughters that was actually in love with the son.
Yeah.
Son with the Charles, right? It's a bit confusing with all these roles, like everyone's intertwined somehow.
Yeah.
Through family. So yeah, no, it's very, I mean, it's very dysfunctional. I mean, that too, you know, not just Violet, but then Bev's behavior as well. I mean, it's, yeah.
Yeah. So what happens with Bev is that because of his upbringing, it all led to what happened to him, because there was no therapy, obviously no counseling. So he had to cope the best way that he had to cope, which he probably and most likely learned in childhood, and that's what he was now doing in his adulthood, because that's what he knew. And that is pretty sad, his ending. And he also had a favorite child, Barbara. And again, that is a problem for the other children in the family when a parent can choose a favorite child. So, yeah. So I think the whole dynamic, now we are going to Violet from Bev. The whole dynamic, as you said, was very codependent, and they were the right fit. Because we know about Bev's upbringing, that he lived in a car and that he was deprived. And they were the first two people from their families to graduate high school. And that was an achievement to them. And so we have Violet on one end, also ending up with him. And she had trauma in her childhood where her mother moved from relationship to relationship, from man to man. And the men that she attracted or she stayed with seemed to have been dysfunctional also and very codependent, because we hear that Violet himself was beaten with a claw hammer by one of her mother's many suitors, many men.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
and, we learn also, this is a bit further, I think, along the movie, that you know, her mother, Violet's mother, makes a joke on her birthday where she wanted these boots, you know, these cowboy boots, and she gets these. I mean, how cruel can that be? I mean, it's just so sad, you know. You learn a little bit also about her childhood, that she was given this old used boots, you know, and it was used as her mother joked with that, you know, like, so it's also deprived, you know, she was also deprived in her childhood, I think, and she didn't get the emotional connection and support and love that a child would need to get.
No.
I mean, it was ridiculous.
Because
sad,
yeah,
tragic.
Because a mother was busy trying to connect with somebody for a relationship, and we do talk about this, and we are learning about this, the importance of recognizing that a romantic relationship is a secondary relationship. It is important that we nurture our first relationship and not be too desperate to go into relationship, because in our desperation to try and enter a romantic relationship, we end up abandoning the very children that we initially loved so much to have when we set out to have a first relationship. And then when we are in a second relationship or wanting this next relationship, we are now abandoning these children. And now when we are also addicted, like Violet, to a drug or a medication or alcohol, we end up abandoning these children indirectly. We might think we love them, but the problem is, whilst we are indulging in our drug of choice, it is not possible that we can love anybody else, because that becomes a first. Because what we are trying to do in our addictions is to fill a void. We are trying to remove the pain. And the problem is, whilst the addiction does not remove the pain, it takes us away from us first. And it also takes us away from anyone else who we love and who might love us.
Yeah, absolutely. It takes the time and the space, the mental energy from who you should be spending time with, who is supposed to be your priority. You know, I think this, and I think, you know, I mean, it's a very sharp example, you know, when you have something like alcohol or drugs. But I think also today, you know, it can be your mobile phone, you know, or online shopping, you know. I mean, it's how you spend your time.
Exactly.
And how you, it's very subtle, but it has a very similar effect, I think.
It does.
You know,
it does.
You have to be conscious how you take your time, how you spend your time.
And food.
And what and on whom. Yeah.
And exercise. And exercise. Sometimes we notice these things such as food, and we just say, I'm eating. And exercise, we say, I'm exercising, but we actually don't recognize there's actually addictions. Even in our desire to be healthy, we can overdo it. And so that's really powerful. And with Violet, we've got a stretchy theme around her, because we also notice she's a very intelligent woman. And she said something that's very significant that I picked up. Nothing passed through her. Nobody could do anything that she didn't notice. She couldn't see. And she could pick up things. And in that also, she could manipulate other people. It's possible to do that. And the next thing that I picked up was that because of her upbringing, because she was not conscious herself, she might have been intelligent, but she was not conscious, she was not aware. And in that lack of awareness, what happened was that she didn't think that, she compared traumas. She didn't think that because her children were raised in the environment where she was an addict and her husband was an addict, they were not traumatized simply because she compared her trauma of being beaten with a claw hammer with their trauma of the struggle of having disconnected parents. And there's no comparison.
Yeah. What do you mean by that?
What I mean is,
no comparison.
She had physical trauma where she was physically abused. And her children were emotionally abused and neglected, but she didn't think that they suffered because they were not beaten, just like her.
Oh, I see. Yes. Yeah, I can. That sounds familiar.
Yeah.
I think. For me personally,
and many people say that. Many people say and do that because they believe that because you were not hit by a parent, So you can't have suffered trauma. And you might find that that is why many people, other people also might not believe that they've got trauma, because they didn't experience poverty, they were not loved, or maybe their parents were well off. So, and this is the exact thing that Violet was saying to her children, that you had everything because they were provided for. She felt that that was enough. But what she didn't recognize was that although they were provided for in terms of food and trying to get them to school, but emotionally they were deprived.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. I agree. I couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
That can happen often. Yeah. That someone like her compares, the physical abuse, which is accompanied by emotional, by the way.
Absolutely.
That is traumatic, and the rest, forget about it. You're spoiled. You're not, you're provided for, and therefore you have nothing missing.
Exactly.
That can be a thread, and it reminds me also of other movies we've seen where you exactly had that, like the I'm thinking, I don't remember the name of the movie. Oh, never mind. But it's the same theme, where the son says to the father, I have everything, but something was missing.
Yes.
The one with Jeremy Irons, that moment. Anyway,
okay.
Let's not mix movies.
All right. I remember it. I do. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, very interesting. Okay, so that's Violet. I think Violet will appear in other people's things also, but I think she's the powerful figure in there, and she's and being aware, also very codependent in her relationship, and being an addict, and also the awareness of the secrecy that his husband had fathered a child with a sister and not confronting any of them. And that is a concern, because what she was trying to do, these two people, Bev and Violet, had abandonment trauma, and that's what they were trying to strategize to prevent. They did abandon each other anyway, because they were not in a relationship, they just lived together, but they thought they put band-aid, applied band-aid to their situation, put a little plaster to a deep wound, and unfortunately it didn't work, because the voids were there until the end.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's suggestive that Bev committed suicide, and I probably he has. I mean, in his misery.
Yes.
I think out of misery he committed suicide. It's never made clear, right? It's never made clear. So he drowned, and I think it's part of the shame and stigma of all these issues, like the child, and also this as well. It's almost like they implicitly wanted to make it look like as if it was accidental drowning, but it's almost understood that everyone understood, or most people understood, it was
suicide. It was. And the thing about it is, I suspect that from my assumption, it might have been because he found out that Ivy and little Charles were in a relationship. I feel like that might have been the last straw for him, because then he didn't know how to explain himself when they came clean.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I think at that point, like, to me, it was like he endured so much of abuse also from Violet. For me, I felt it could have been also just any kind of episode of arguing with her, or
I think
that could have pushed him.
He had learned to live with that. I think the final that shame would have been too much, because imagine when these two came clean in front of him, what was he going to say to his family?
Oh my God.
I think that's that's a powerful reason why he might have done this, because I don't think both of them, Violet and him, I don't think much escaped them. I think he was quite aware of what was going on around him. And I feel like that might have been one of the reason why he took that route.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then we have Charles. Charles, Matty Faye's husband. And Charles, again, apparently, according to Violet, he smoked grass. So he was probably in his own world, even as things were happening. Very supportive, loved his wife, but the wife also was very, very challenging because he pointed out that to her that you and your sister, are just, they are not nice to people. And this is something we need to learn to be aware of, because sometimes we've got like patterns in the family where in our different little ways we can be not nice to people, and it's important to find out that this is a pattern and what might be causing this. And of course they knew about their traumas, but they couldn't link their traumas to their behaviors.
Yeah, sure, I can see that. And
so
in fact, they were very similar in that respect.
Exactly.
And also it was so poignant, when Matty, the woman, was so cruel, always belittling, the son, Charles. And her husband pointed that out to her.
But do you know why?
I think that was the point.
Why do you think that was?
That she was belittling him.
Yeah. Was it not out of shame and she was trying to
I think so. I think because she knew that it's
the one who did it. So I think what it was, you're right. I think what it was is that she was trying to cover her mistakes somehow and taking things on him, and trying to punish
it out
him for what she had done. And that's what we do. We try to find weak points, isn't it? When we struggle in life, we have this tendency of finding a weaker point to lash out at. And most of the time, the weaker points are people who are next to us, nearest and dearest. When we are out there in public, we are lovely to everybody else. But when it comes to our nearest and dearest, we lash out at them.
Because of our own frustrations, right? Like he was a scapegoat.
Yes, he was a
scapegoat.
And we do that because we cannot control ourselves. Because when and if I have compassion for myself and I'm able to manage myself and control myself, I have no need to lash out at anyone else. It's not that we are going to be constantly aware and not lash out at anyone at all, but the amount of times that we do it and the impact of how we do it and the aggression with which we do it can be really catastrophic and can show that we are dysregulated, because many people are out there are dysregulated. I know myself when once upon a time I was very dysregulated, but now it's only from pre-triggers such as I haven't slept well, and if something comes into my view and I am not really well rested and well focused, I might react, and that is now on occasion rather than before. But they were very dysregulated, the two of them. And what also happens with dysregulation, when you can't regulate yourself, is that you are also very entitled, because you feel that people have to just accommodate your reactions, your frustrations, your anger. But it's very subconscious also, very subconscious. So and the other thing with Matty Faye was that she had a secret, and that's another theme that I picked up in this film. She had a secret that she kept about her child, and this was also common. There was another person we'll talk about here who kept a secret, two secrets actually, and that can be a problem in life. Sometimes we do have these secrets that we keep, and the problem is we keep secrets from shame. But my concern more than anything was the fact that she had actually had a child with her sister's husband. Maybe if it was somebody else, you know, you can sort of say, all right, but your own sister, I think that is very challenging to do that to your own blood, you know. And this is a woman who actually held her dear. Her sister loved her so much. And I think this is why she forgave her, because of the dents in her head from defending her from her mother's man. I think that's the reason why she didn't want to do anything about that.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, that's a plausible theory.
Yeah, she didn't want,
because otherwise
she didn't want to lose it.
Otherwise, I think the reaction would be much harsher from, you know, in a situation like this, from one sister to another, right? To find out.
Exactly. Yeah, she could have confronted her sister, and she could have confronted her husband, and maybe even divorced her husband, and she could have probably not spoken to her sister. That's what some people would do. But so much that was not addressed there. And when we do that also, we repress trauma, because that's a traumatic situation. That's repression. Yeah. Because
absolutely.
It's self-betrayal. You don't just let things like that go without addressing them somehow, even with yourself, to sit with yourself and parent yourself, but then to also communicate, because that's not a secret to keep, something like that.
Sure.
It damages
I
you.
agree.
And then,
very difficult, but one needs to address it. Very challenging situation.
Exactly. And then what about Barbara? What do you think about Barbara?
So she was the oldest daughter, and she was she was in a way very similar to her mother, I find. So she also divorced. I think she wanted, she's very much in control, like, you know, wanting to be in control.
Exactly.
Very controlling.
Typical firstborn.
So, sorry?
Typical firstborn.
I guess. So very similar. I mean, you know, even if she would probably think of herself as very different to her mother, I'd find her, because they often argue the most. I think they're most confrontational and conflictual, but they're actually very similar.
Yes. So So Barbara, really, we have a disintegrating relationship. We have a betraying husband, and we have a daughter who's also following the same route of childhood trauma, because her daughter, Jean, was already, you know, she was already smoking at 14, and she was sort of experimenting, wasn't she? We noted. So that is another impact of childhood trauma, and that had been transmitted by the mother, and they didn't see eye to eye with the mother. So Barbara was controlling, as you said, and also was struggling with relationship difficulties.
She was divorced with Bill.
But the good thing about it was, at least she was not staying in a dysfunctional relationship. She was making the decision to leave. She wasn't, although she did want her husband to be involved in their child's life, and maybe she had misgivings and wanted something to change, but no, it wasn't, because he was leaving, and she was actually asking him whether he was leaving her, and he said, he made it clear that he was, but it wasn't really sort of written in stone, was it? So
that's a good point.
So it's important, because actually she had an opportunity to reverse the divorce if possible, because they hadn't actually divorced. But if they were to go to therapy, I think there was something that could be workable. And her husband had also cheated on her, and Bill, isn't it? And that is actually another issue where people, instead of trying to resolve their problems, one, go to therapy or leave before they do anything, they opt to betray their relationship partner. And that's trauma.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so many people do that. Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because it is, isn't it?
Yeah, it's an easy, quick fix.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not a fix, but it's a it's a band-aid, as you said earlier, also.
Yeah. So that's the thing with Bill. This is what he did, and of course he was very sort of defensive around his daughter, but he could do more. He could do more to support his daughter and to prevent the addictions early on, because we can see if this child followed that route of addictions, of smoking and all that, then she's likely to end up, you know, somewhere not very great.
Yeah.
All right, so the next person that we can look at is that daughter Jean. So Jean, we've seen what was happening with her, and because of her vulnerability, this is the thing also, when a child is that vulnerable, when there's a lot of trauma in a family, the child becomes vulnerable to predators, you see. And this is what happened when she met Steve, who was Karen's boyfriend, and he knew she was 14, and then he's introducing her to weed. He's trying to groom her. He was basically grooming that young girl.
Yeah. The sleazy guy.
And we noticed that, and here he is in a family where there's been a funeral, and he has come with his fiance, and he is trying to groom a 14-year-old niece of his fiance. I think that's really something to reflect on. That's criminal, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, she's underage, and I mean, it's kind of, and that's the thing, you know, you said vulnerable to predators, because it seems like she's going along with it. But I mean, she's 14, you know, and I think it's a cry for subconsciously a cry for attention. Maybe, you know, and the way to cope, to kind of escape maybe the situation, you know, the parental situation and everything.
But
this kind of rebelling, or, you know, if you like rebelling behavior.
But that's what happens when children are are vulnerable. When people are vulnerable, they are susceptible. It's like if my immunity is low, and I go out there and get, you know, and meet people with bags, then I'm going to be ill, aren't I? And that is the same thing. She was in a dysfunctional family, a breaking down family, where her mother and father are divorcing. And most of the time, we didn't know this, but that makes children vulnerable. Divorce and breakup of family relationships makes children vulnerable. Children from broken up families are vulnerable. Not that anyone is weak, not that mothers or fathers are weak, but ideally a child wants two parents, and if a child doesn't have the two parents, then there is need for more support in the family, because they internalize wanting a stable family. That's what children want.
Exactly.
So very important to recognize that. And so in the end, she needed both parents to support her, but Barbara was really angry with what she was doing. And instead of even just calling the police on this man, she was fighting with her daughter, which really was...
I thought the responses were very diverse, and that's also quite telling. So as you said, like, you know, Barbara, her mother, instead of you know, coming forward to her child and calling the police on this man, she lashes out on her child. Right, if I remember correctly. And I think I think the only healthy kind of, even if it's extreme, response was by the woman, Jonah, the Cheyenne woman, attacking the man with the with the shovel or something. I mean, she is a child, I mean, that's.
Thank God somebody was looking out for the child. Something could, something could have happened out there with all parents not knowing where the child was. Although she's 14, you can't just sort of keep an eye on it 24 hours, but still, she's still a child. She needs, she needs protection. And yes, Jonah, she was also a fascinating character. I think we can go, we can get into her because she's coming to work on her first day, and she is coming across this woman and her attitude, and this man, and he's drinking, and he's telling her all of these things. And you have to be really courageous to join such a family where you are aware of the dysfunctionality like that.
Yes, yeah. And, you can, maybe it's a bit stereotypical, but maybe because she's Cheyenne, an ethnic group, that, maybe she is familiar with these kind of situations. I mean, this is maybe a bit stereotypical of me to say, but there are often these situations. I recall from my experience of living in New Zealand, with Maori culture. It's a disintegration of their cultural values that brought a lot of alcoholism it's a well-known problem in their communities. And so a lot of the men are very violent. There's a lot of domestic violence because of alcoholism. But, they also say that the alcohol, also in Canada, with the groups there, because of their genetic makeup, alcohol is much more, makes them much more vulnerable to violence. It has a stronger effect than on white people. Anyway, this is a bit of a digression, but anyway, yes. So I think your point is a very good one. Yeah, you would think that she must have had experience or some familiarity with this kind of situation. Because otherwise, I think another person would just run, because it is a bit of a challenge, lunatic, like chaotic, challenging situation.
Yeah, that's true. Thank you. And then we have Steve, very dysfunctional Steve, and he's 2 divorces, and he's trying to get married for the 3rd time, and then he's trying to groom a 14-year-old. And you can sort of see how dysfunctional he was, trying to smoke weed and all that. And then he ended up with this lady, Karen, is it Karen? And you recognize the codependency there, the right fit theory. Karen, who has been addicted to relationships. She has been in a relationship which she was talking about, where she used to be called names, nasty names. And she said, I still believed that in love, and that she could love this person and she could fix things and things could change. And then she decided that enough was enough. And she spent time on her own, which is something that we recommend after breakups, after dysfunctional relationships, be on your own. However, it's what you do in that space that is powerful, because sometimes people believe that just being on your own is the best thing. Yes, it is. But what are you doing whilst you are on your own? That is what makes a difference in your next relationship. And this is something nobody taught us, isn't it?
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. No, it's amazing how so often, many people jump immediately into another relationship or go into another while they are still formally with their exes, right?
Yeah.
And
informally.
Yeah. And then you also have I don't know what makes a person try to want to heal when you have that period alone, you know, because I'm trying to, you know, I'm trying to analyze it with myself, like what made me want to, because I could have jumped into a relationship. I didn't feel like it, you know, and I think that felt right for me. I didn't feel like going into another. But what made me reflect what went wrong, you know, without the help of well, maybe a little bit of therapy, but I didn't go for a long time, or without the help of this group. I came to this group much later, you know, but I think that I don't know, but I find it very, very interesting what people do post breakup.
People want to fill a void, and sometimes what happens is that we recognize that the void is too deep to fill with something, and it won't be filled with anything external. You can put sticks and stones in it. You can put 100 people in there or 1 million people. It's not going to fill up. And I think at some point you have this recognition, this aha moment, where you realize that actually, if I do not heal, if I do not do something about my situation, I am just going to change faces, but I'm going to see the same person throughout my life.
Yeah.
And this is the thing that we need to look into, that we will not change the person we are seeing. We will still meet the same person every day until and unless we do some healing work, until we are aware of our patterns, and that these are the patterns that are keeping us stuck. And that is the thing.
You're right.
Some people try to pack it there to say, well, things will change on their own, but they won't. They won't, unfortunately, because the problem is this. If you have a pattern, you have a habit, you have habits that you are used to, and that's your way of life. That's your way of being. And unless you change the way you do things, the way things happen or the outcomes are not likely to change. So you probably had an aha moment and recognized that actually nothing is going to change until I change.
Thank you for reminding me. Actually, you know, I think in the initial periods, I was focused so much on him, you know, what he has done, why he has done it. And then I just somehow shifted to look at what I have done and what I don't want to do again.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think unless you realize that there was a part that you played and you were responsible for and you don't want to repeat, and you think like, why was I like that?
Yeah, the other thing is, you mentioned therapy, and also you came to the group, and what happens is that it's difficult when you've got patterns that you have repeated for 40 years, for 20 years, for 30, 40, 50, 60 years. What happens is you cannot change those patterns alone most of the time. You need help. Why? Because you've been doing it all along on your own. And for you to change that, you really need someone who can, you need accountability. That's why we emphasize accountability in the group, because without accountability, we betray ourselves. We can tell ourselves stories. I'm doing okay, I'm all right. People tend to say that, and we don't have a problem with someone saying I'm okay. But the thing is, what will happen is, when you then recognize your outcomes, that's when you realize that actually you are not.
Yeah.
But when you walk alongside somebody and they're sort of giving you reminders, and the problem that we have most of the time is we don't like that, because we've got a traumatic, independent approach. I can do this, you know, approach. And we don't realize that it's a trauma response. Because we have a sense of that I can accomplish things on my own. Yes, we have resources internally, but you need help to access those resources. You know, when we do system, we say you sit with your emotions and use them to create situations and solutions. But someone has to be there to hold you accountable, as well as you recording your journal to hold yourself accountable. And until you're out of the woods at some point, you need help. You need accountability. Yeah.
And the guidance,
And the problem is many people cannot afford therapy. And sometimes they don't know about support groups like our support groups, where you can just have someone walk with you for a little while and then sort of wean you off, and then you can learn to use tools on your own. And that is the challenge. Yeah. Those are the resources that we need in life today, you see. Yeah. And then we've got Ivy and little Charles. Of course, we've got this theme of codependency, and Ivy is one of these children in this family who's got secrets. She kept two secrets from her family. Number one, the secret of her cancer, where she actually had a hysterectomy, and then she kept the secret about Charles. And of course, because she did that, she didn't realize she was getting into an incestuous relationship, which was quite devastating, I think, for both of them to discover in the end.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. I cannot imagine.
Yeah, and the thing about it is, this is what happens, because Matty Faith kept a secret, Violet kept a secret, what's his name, Bev kept a secret. And because of that, children belonging to the Sun family ended up in a relationship.
Yeah.
If this had been communicated early on and these children knew, then none of this would have happened. Imagine the impact of that on those children for the rest of their lives.
Yeah, very traumatizing, in fact. I mean, I think Ivy was kind of so full of hope and love, you know, that she'll be getting married to this guy, and then to discover that he's also kind of stunted in a way because of his mother belittling him. And I mean, trauma on top of trauma.
Yes.
I think it's very unhealthy, very, very you don't know who's getting it worse.
Exactly. And in the end, we had three daughters who are not in relationships, whose relationships have been disintegrated. Because although we have Karen, who is with Steve, and then finds out what Steve has done, she's devastated by what Steve has done, and she's trying to blame Jean, she's trying to blame Barbara, she's trying to find anyone else to blame apart from Steve. And this is what codependency does. It doesn't see the problem in itself, it sees the problem in anyone else.
Yeah. And also in her, you know, she avoids
accountability,
her own responsibility that she was with this guy, you know, that she didn't recognize the red flags.
I think she knew. I think there's things that she picked up, but she didn't want to see that, because he had sort of come to a rescue. She thought that the time she had spent on her own had been adequate for her to now move on to a relationship. And she thought, because she found him in this time when she wasn't looking, then that might have meant that's him. But she didn't realize she was still repeating patterns because she hadn't explored healing work.
So she knew, she knew, but she wasn't acting on it. She didn't want to fully acknowledge it. I think it was self-sabotage. Really.
And then we had Dr. Beck. I do kind of like these themes where you have professionals into, you know, in the picture. We know about medication, how medication is prescribed in the first world, I think. I think there's a lot of prescription medication. And you could see the rage of Barbara. Dr. Beck had been Violet's doctor for a while. They knew him, but he knew Violet's history of addiction. But there he is, prescribing pill after pill after pill, and it's all money, isn't it? Getting into pharma, isn't it? And
no, completely. It's such a big industry, and it's you know, it's really a tragedy, because they get I mean, of course they get interest out of, you know, out of prescribing, the doctors themselves, from the pharmacological industry. And no, it's criminal. It's criminal. I think in the US, you know, they're making addiction out of, they're addicting people for profit, basically. You know, and then the same people prescribe medicine to help them get out of addiction. I mean, it's, yeah. So I must say, I didn't notice much about the doctor. I mean, he had a minor role, I think, so I didn't really, you know, pick anything about him. But yeah, this prescribing. I mean, often, you know, the GPs, the family GPs, would be aware of a person, of their own client, you know, being addicted.
Yeah.
But they're complicit with it. They don't deal with. They don't see or deal or try to heal the psychological kind of the dependency, the addiction. They're actually enabling it.
The thing is with I think healthcare, sometimes people are scared of being sued, and then they just sometimes just accept what the patient is saying and what they're asking for, and they just go ahead and prescribe. And it's really sad, because then you think of the odds. Are you acting in the best interest of the person, or are you just you know, doing things to go along with what they want? And in the end, this damages lives, rather than observe or recognize that someone is now addicted and they might need referral to a psychologist or a psychiatrist, or you know, somebody who can support them to look into their psychological existence. You know, you just keep prescribing drugs. I think that's quite concerning, and it's very difficult. At her age, it was going to be difficult to manage that addiction. I know Barbara.
Yeah.
Barbara was applying Band-Aid. She was doing her best, and this is what we do when we are family. We try to help and we take away those things. But to actually manage someone's addiction, you've got to win off. You can't just take away the drugs just like that.
Yeah, it's very difficult.
You've got to either find a replacement, or you have to win someone off gradually. Otherwise, it causes, you know, more damage. Because they are going to, you know, they are going to. I'm trying to think of the word. It just escaped my head. Where they really want that drug, and what do? You've got to do something about that. Otherwise, they will just, you know, break down, or just like what she was doing, the reactions that she had. It might have been that she was withdrawal. So that's really powerful. I don't know if you've got anything else to say about this film, but I think it's just one of those powerful films, and it just portrays trauma, and it's one of those films we need to watch and probably see parts of our families in it, and maybe look into ways that we can actually look into healing, to look into ways that we can adjust or adapt our behaviors gradually. It's not an overnight fix, is it?
Yeah. No, I mean, I think, it was very overwhelming. I think the movie itself, and then the Violet, the main character, the mother, a very difficult woman to be with, to live with, to be the daughter of. For me, that was, you know, that was the overall. I mean, we had all these other themes with other characters, but for me, her personality was so overwhelming and strong and manipulative and difficult and everything, you know, that was the that was the main feature of the movie, and it was actually quite difficult to watch, because it was just, you just felt this heaviness. And I must say I recognize a bit of that in my mother, you know, and you know, it was, I think she was addicted to chaos as well. I mean, she was constantly, like, you know, instigating, provoking, you know, with her approach, just this chaos and this fighting, you know. And there was never a piece of there was almost never a period of peacefulness, you know, around her. You know, she was with other people, it was always arguing, it was always some, you know, nasty comment, or so very heavy environment to be in.
She was. She was.
Try to relate to.
Yeah, I think it's hate people, and they are we are victims of victims, and you know, we know it.
But mentality. I think. Yeah, I think we didn't mention that, but I think, Violet. Well, we did indirectly, you know, by not allowing to compare her trauma with her daughter's trauma. I think she was putting herself in this victim mode and mentality. Like she was always, I think that was also quite often the underlying theme, that she was always kind of putting herself out there as a victim.
She was the number one victim, and also she was entitled. As I said earlier on, what happens is through our trauma, we become entitled. This is why we need to manage the victim mindset. It's because it can make us feel entitled. Because I do notice sometimes people talking about, well, people don't do this. What people? Who is supposed to do what for whom? And this is powerful, because I'm not saying that we need not help each other, but who are we expecting to come and suddenly make our lives easy?
Yeah, no, it has to come from it. It has to be us helping ourselves.
Yeah,
because no one else will rescue us.
Yeah,
and sadly, she was a victim.
Yeah,
you know, in her childhood. But yeah, I mean, I think as you said, the problem is that she became she felt as a result entitled. And overemphasized, you know. It's the entitlement in that
we become entitled situation. And it's important that we recognize that when we in situations where we grew up with trauma, we have no entitlement to anything or anyone at all. Our entitlement is to us to manage ourselves, to find ways where we can seek support, to find ways where we can access our internal resources and manage ourselves, to find ways where we can ask for help. That is the only entitlement that we have. But sometimes what we do is we become so entitled that anything and anyone in our way needs to suffer because we've suffered. And the problem is with that entitlement, it's not really intentional. But the problem again is that when we are adults, we need to take responsibility, because what happens is when we commit a crime out there, nobody is going to understand our trauma. Although, yes, they are now going into prison. I like the Step into the Circle program. They are now getting into prisons to help people and raise awareness of trauma. But if you commit a crime, you still go to jail. So it is that even with any behavior, and this is why our relationships suffer, because a partner at some point recognizes our entitlements. Because we want our needs met, because my mother didn't meet my needs. So you come on and meet my needs. And unfortunately, it becomes too much for somebody. And then they decide that I can't do this. I've had enough and I need to go. And unfortunately, our relationships end because of that. And then we call people names, we accuse them of this, that behavior, but we also need to step back and recognize our part in there. When we were staying, we are not blaming anybody, because we are all traumatized and we've done this. But for myself, I step back and say, when I stayed longer, I was feeling entitled that they're going to change. They need to change for me. They need to do this because we are in a relationship. And the moment that I recognize that someone was choosing and that they are free and they've got the right to their choices, I realize that I either have to live with it or get out. And I chose myself in the end, and I got out.
Yeah, what a change of approach. Yeah. And you have to become aware of it, to make that decision. And so insightful.
Thank you so much, Judita. And this has been just amazing. It's quite a long film. I wish we had done. I think I need to sort out Zoom, because I think I would have loved Anna to join us on this, and other people, because this film is
I see you watching.
Yeah.
Hi.
Yeah. So I will see you soon, and thank you, and give love to Manu.
I will, yeah, thank you.
Okay, and everyone else, thank you for watching, and please continue to heal and to seek resources out there. We've got the system tool for you to use your emotions to create solutions, to learn to sit with yourself and to access your inner resources, so that we don't keep repeating these patterns and we don't resort to addictions to manage our pain. I hope that was helpful, and I hope we see you soon, and we'll be finding another film again with Judita, hopefully. Thank you so much for watching, everyone. Thank you, Anna. Oh, Anna is here. Carol, Admire, and you. Okay, bye. Bye. Relationships.